Okay, and now on to a set of introspective questions. Who most helped you become the person you are today?
Well, I mean, besides Judy.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, because that one's sort of obvious.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in some ways, if there was, it's not one person. You know, I think early on, it was probably Joe Schwab.
Mm-hmm.
In an interesting way, it was Benjamin Bloom. Even though he and I went separate ways intellectually, because I never became a measurement person the way all of his students did, until much later when I sort of became one when we did the national board, although I had Lee Cronbach and Ed Hartle on the team to keep me honest. Ben taught me that data didn't exist, didn't have a life of their own. Can I tell a little story about Bloom and what the influence was? I mean, I was working with him. I was my first research assistantship, and we were working with big bodies of longitudinal data because we were trying to do research that led to Project Head Start, looking at the impact of early experience. And he began to do statistical manipulations of the data, doing arcsine transformations to smooth out curves and stuff. And it was sort of boggling my mind. And I finally said to him, Mr. Bloom, can you do that? Mm-hmm. And he said to me, Lee, as a scholar, the question is who's in charge of the data and who created it? You were the data. The fact is the data never exist independently. Mm-hmm. Data are data because somebody has decided to observe and collect and gather and analyze them. You can do whatever you want with your data as long as you're absolutely transparent, honest, and fully disclosing about what you did and how you did it and what your rationale was. Because the ultimate judge is your peers who will examine your work critically and decide whether they are persuaded by you or not. Mm. And I've never forgotten that notion that Bloom taught me, that even the quantitative data that looks like it's so objective was created by people who invented instruments, decided what to ask and what not to ask, decided what counted as an item. I still remember at the IRT, Andy Porter and his research group discovering that the difference, that in a fourth grade math standardized achievement test, 4 items accounted for almost half a grade equivalent. And on that test, there were 4 items on Roman numerals. Mm. You know, so a kind of notion that you can do whatever you want with your data. You have to be inventive and creative. You've got to interrogate the data like you interrogate a text.
Mm, sure.
But then you've got to be totally transparent and honest to your peers about what you did, how you did it, and why, or you're not a scholar.
Right.
So that was really, those were important, very profound.
What inspires you?
What inspires me? I guess, you know, it would be wonderful to say that what inspires me is a vision of a great society or something, but I don't think it is. I mean, I think it's there. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm inspired by the stimulation and excitement of really good questions. Mm-hmm. I think that teaching and research ought to be fun. They ought to be enjoyable. They ought to give you as much opportunity to laugh as to cry or to, you know. I think that's what keeps me inspired. And I hope that, you know, that source of pleasures more frequently directed toward things worth doing than not worth doing, though I don't think that's always the case. But yeah, that's what inspires me.
What do you find uninspiring?
Yeah, stuff that's boring. I mean, I long ago decided that if you want to understand the influence of somebody's work, it is rarely kind of the quality of the thought abstractly. Dewey was influential in spite of the fact that he wrote badly and probably spoke even more badly. So, but I think he had the good fortune of his ideas came into the hands of people like Kilpatrick and others, Schwab, who added a certain element of excitement and accessibility. Jerome Bruner's work is to a larger measure not only the quality of his thinking, but the quality of his writing, the way in which he presents the ideas. So I find things that are boring, needlessly abstract. I want things with examples and concrete applications. And I find relentless abstraction just puts me to bed or just gets me to go watch a football game.
What is your favorite word?
Well, my daughter thinks it's pedagogy. I like the word teaching a lot. I like the word naches, that Yiddish word I told you about, the pleasure you get from the accomplishments of others. Yeah, those are good words.
What is your favorite curse word?
Shit. But you know, at a certain point you use something often enough, it loses a lot of its...
Part of your vocabulary?
Yeah, well, you know, I'll embarrass my wife by telling the story of one of our kids coming back from playing with a neighbor across the street when he was about 6, and he was crying. And Judy said, "What are you crying about?" And he said, "Mrs. So-and-so said that shit's a bad word." I don't know, it just sort of happened.
What profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
I would have loved to be a writer for Seinfeld or Saturday Night Live. I mean, I see on TV the reminiscences of the people who wrote for the Sid Caesar show, you know, Neil Simon and Larry David and this group, and say, that would have been fun. And the closest I ever come to that kind of thing is when Berliner and Fenstermacher and Chabelson and I and our spouses get together. It gets pretty funny.
Good.
It gets really good and
Your
clever.
good writing team?
A talking team.
Sure. What profession other than your own would you not have liked to attempt?
Wow. Okay. It'll seem odd. I think I would have found it extraordinarily difficult because of my own ADD, which I think probably I would have been diagnosed with if I were young today. I would have had trouble having the discipline to do the job I value most in the world myself, which is to teach school for 30 years as a career. It's so hard. I mean, I would have loved to do it. I just don't think I would have been good at it for as long as a professional needs to do it well.
Fascinating.
I think that's one of my real limitations.
What is your favorite movie?
I mean, you know, long silences can be edited out, can't they? As I think reflectively. What is my favorite movie? This is an odd choice, and I probably would answer differently if you asked me the question at different times. it's a toss-up between Groundhog Day and what was the movie with Will Ferrell and Emma Thompson where the Will Ferrell character realizes that he's actually, it's like Groundhog Day. He keeps on doing the same thing day after day after day after day. And then he realizes he's a character in a novel that a novelist with writer's block can't finish.
I've
Do you know
seen
one?
I don't remember the name of it.
It's an amazing movie. But they both deal in very funny ways. I mean, Will Ferrell and what's his name in Groundhog Day?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray are among the funniest and most talented comedic actors of our generation. And they do it so well, but it's the notion, I mean, Groundhog Day is all about learning from experience or not learning from experience. And you know the old line, some teachers have 1 year of experience 20 times and some have 20 years of experience. Well, Groundhog Day is about people who have 1 day of experience again and again and again, and they never really get better. But the Bill Murray character realizes the trap he's in and does get smarter. I mean, there's something really neat about that. And the Will Ferrell movie, again, so many people lead their lives as if they're characters in a play or a novel somebody else has written. And you really become an agent in the world when you stop blaming everything else for who you are and what you're doing and begin forcing the novelist to get out of the way so you can write the story yourself. And you know, the Silicon Valley line, Alan Kay, I think, said it, we don't predict the future, we invent it. I think one of the things some of us have learned is that we've got to stop trying to predict the future of education, or worse yet, just bemoan it. And we've got to do what we can to rewrite it, to invent it.
If you could have a dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
It's got to be somebody who would go to the world's best possible deli with me. Berliner is a lot of fun to eat with because he eats without guilt, unless Ursula is there. Who else would be good to have that kind of meal with? Well, I think somebody like Larry David or Seinfeld. I mean, just so that you could eat that food and be laughing constantly.
The entire time.
All the time.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I've heard that question before. I suspect what I would hear would be, I never expected to see you here. Well, I would hope that God would say, welcome, come in. In spite of the selectivity of our admissions process, it's not going to be as boring here as you think.
Okay. Judy, your wife, says that one of your greatest virtues is incorporated in the Yiddish word kavel, which means taking pleasure in the accomplishment of others. You are wise, patient, a great listener and mentor of graduate students and young faculty. Gary Fenstermacher notes this as well, that you promote the careers of younger and more junior scholars so well. He knows of at least a dozen highly reputable scholars today who are where they are in part, perhaps in considerable part, because of your adopting them. What are your words of wisdom for graduate students and young faculty aspiring to be educational researchers, philosophers, theorists, and the like you?
Well, I think it starts with the recognition that whether they're your students or colleagues, the likelihood is that you are surrounded with people who are smarter than you are about really important stuff. Important stuff for the world of education and important stuff for you. And it, I suppose, is a little bit like someone You know, when we were at Michigan State, we were there for every basketball game that Magic Johnson ever played on the home court. And the lovely thing about Magic Johnson as a metaphor is that he felled more from his assists than from his baskets. He made lots of baskets. But the thing they always said about Magic was he makes everybody around him better. I mean, that was their character. And I think that was true. And I would hope that I could both model and teach that to younger scholars. That to the extent that what you do can make other people around you, whether they're your students, colleagues, physically present or virtual, better at what they're doing, in the long run, that's going to be best for you as well. One of the things I've tried to teach is that, you know, sometimes we get annoyed by the need to use footnotes and references. And my sense of footnotes and references, citations in effect, is that our entire field depends on the scholarship of others. Almost everything we do, we couldn't do if others hadn't done work before us or at the same time. And, you know, we can't give them residuals. We can't pay people for doing work that made what we do smarter. But we can write them a thank you note. And I think of citations, of being able to, I look forward to citing Audrey Beardsley. Because that will be my way of saying thank you for work that you've done. In fact, I have cited you, Audrey, for some of your earlier work, and I'm sure I'll do it again. Because our entire field depends on our giving away our knowledge free.
Sure.
That's what publication's all about. It's making your work public. And when you do that, you make it possible for others to do better work than you did by starting where you leave off. And when they cite your work, they're saying thank you. And that's what we do. The two worst sins we can commit as scholars are plagiarism, because it's taking a gift and not saying thank you. In fact, worse yet, it's taking a gift and pretending it was always yours to begin with. And that violates the norms of the community of scholars. Our research is community property. It belongs to everybody, and that's how we should view it. And the other great sin is fraud, where we publish work that we know isn't true, and yet others, because they trust us, will take it seriously.
Sure.
And that ruins their work. It's like having a bad part in an airplane. And so I think those are the values that I would want to communicate to young people, that kind of generosity, courtesy, membership in a community of people who respect, admire, and value one another is what makes our work possible.
Perfect. When asked to capture the essence and nature of Lee Shulman, Arthur noted you are a gifted speaker and storyteller. You engage well with a wide variety of people easily and effectively. Bob Floden noted you have an incredible ability to give spellbinding talks on a range of topics, helping listeners see subtleties in material that they thought they knew. Suzanne said you are generous, intellectual, and personal, and Pat said you are intellectually generous. Though few can keep up with your intellectual inventiveness, you have a gift for making others feel valued for their ideas. David called you a mensch, a man committed to his family and friends, to his institution, to the promotion of scholarship, to Jewish culture, to a good meal, good wine, a good laugh, and to life. Gary said that while you are a superb facilitator of others' careers and a terrific broker of scholarly collaborations, you hold the highest degree of attainment possible in schmoozing. If there were a PhD in schmoozing, you would be the person to write the standards for it, and you would be its first recipient. Tom added that you are a beautiful human being, one who cares deeply about others, one who believes that everyone has the capacity to do good work with the right facilitation, and you are a supremely good facilitator in that realm. Gary agrees. Tom ended with this note: I love Lee Shulman. Sounds like a bumper sticker or a coffee cup in the making. Well, there's no doubt that we all love Lee Shulman and hold you in highest regard, schmoozer and scholar alike. And we thank you so much for being you, everything you've done for us, the Academy, future educationists, educational researchers, and of course, students in our schools. Thank you for being you. And thank you for being interviewed.
Thank you.